Saturnastra, chapter 35. Amy the Tutor. Amy sat down before her, and he took one of the stones from his plate, and he commented, "A perfect imitation. I have no choice but to be perfect," said Eleanor sadly. "It is all I can do not to be a burden." At this made Amy laugh heartily, and Eleanor pouted but said nothing. Amy then said, "You are still going on about that nonsense. A pity. Still, it is not an erroneous analysis of the world around you, and sometimes a person's mere presence can bring about calamity to those around him, and humans cannot be bothered by every little ant they step on." "Oh, you do make a point," commented Eleanor. And by now he had finished bathing, and he took the clothing he had already worn and laid it out on the bed to air it. And then he went into his closet to choose the next clean attire underneath, and the attire was a black kimono dress with a black sash, and it had several glistering gray-blue strokes for decoration, and since he was indoors he put it on the white socks. And in a watch he get dressed in silence, and a nagging thought was in the back of her head, and her thoughts made Amy chuckle, and Eleanor glared at it and said, "What's so funny?" Nothing, said Amy. And as he took his plate and sat down to eat on his pile of gold, Eleanor asked Amy, "Teacher, why do dragons sit on piles of gold and kidnap princesses?" Amy rested his head on his hand, and he languidly leaned closer to Eleanor, and then he asked, "You used creams before?" "Yes, I use them from time to time. If they're available," she responded, furrowing her brow and licking her lower lip. "Why do you use it?" asked Amy. "My old teacher said the creams were good for your skin, and I use them because they feel and smell nice." "Is that why dragons sleep on a bed of gold?" inquired Eleanor. "Yes, that is the reason," answered Amy, and he added, "It is. If you want to know more about it, you should ask her. He knows a lot more about this stuff than I do." "Oh," said Eleanor, "what do you know?" "I am quite proficient in the liberal arts, astronomy, court politics, and archaeology," said Amy dryly. By now he was more or less done with his food, and he was simply lying down and digesting his meal. And he was also listening to the conversation, and we figured he was listening since his ears would slightly rise whenever somebody spoke. "My old teacher always taught me liberal arts and a bit of astronomy, just enough so that I can tell the seasons apart. And I don't think I need court politics, because I don't think I've ever entered a palace. As for other types of politics, my teacher said it was better for ladies to stay out of it." "I'm a bit curious about archaeology," ranted Eleanor. "And what is it?" "It is a fancy way of saying treasure hunting or grave robbing, and most of the easy-to-find treasure have already been found, and with basic archaeological education you can make an educated guess at whether the next treasure might be buried, and the rest is just getting a shovel and digging it up," explained Amy. "That sounds like a lot of work," said Eleanor sadly. "You can pay people to dig up your treasure for you," remarked Amy sarcastically. "But what if they decide to steal my treasure?" inquired Eleanor. "Just hire mercenaries to kill the hireling if they decide to run away with the treasure," responded Amy. "But what if the mercenaries kill everyone and run away with the treasure?" inquired Eleanor. "There are some practical solutions, the first being only using family members or friends to help you dig up the treasure. And if you don't trust your family or have no friends, you can hire mercenaries of good repute. Mercenaries depend a lot on their reputation to get employment, and currently the mercenary groups with the best reputation are the Alpha Draconis, the Rhymes Gold, the Pumeni Mamone, the Nazari Regiment, Los Mamelucos, Los 144,000, the Flying Tigers, the Sons of Blood Red, the Red Hand, the Freelancers, the Contractors, Candia, the Madame Legionnaire, La Legion de Joder Pancha." Eleanor folded her arm and thought a moment, and then she nodded and asked, "Do they all cost the same, or are they trustworthy because they are expensive?" "The price varies on the circumstances. They're usually cheaper during war times, and if you just need like 30 or 40 guys, they will be a lot more expensive than hiring 300 soldiers," responded Amy. "Also, certain companies have set prices, and with others you can haggle, and the companies without variable prices are the Alpha Draconis, the Freelancers, the Malan Legion, and La Legion de Joder Pancha." Eleanor clapped and said, "Yes, we are starting to narrow down the list. So which is the cheapest mercenary too?" "The Madan Legion," answered Amy, and he added, "They have managed to cut down prices via strict codes of austerity. Still, a good chunk of the nobility prefers to hire manlier soldiers. They are fine as long as they are good lookers and they can manage the hirelings well. And you know, to keep them from wasting time," commented Eleanor, "La Legion de Joder Pancha has close ties to slave market and the Merchants Guild, and they will know how to manage your employees or help you acquire slave workers at a modest price," remarked Amy. Amy looked up and saw Kurt standing by the entrance, and he knocked lightly on the door to make his presence known, and he said, Good evening and forgive my introductions. He crowned and he smiled, giving him a sideways look. And Kurt gave a wide smile, and he walked towards his pile of gold, and he inspected the coins, and he took down one between his finger, and he sniffed it and licked it, and took a bite from it, and then he put it back down. Eleanor's attention was focused on what Kurt was doing, and she turned her seat around to get a better look. Amy glared at Kurt for interrupting his lessons, but his gaze changed to curiosity as his eyes followed the movement of Kurt's hand. And when he was done inspecting the coin, he went to the bathroom, and Kurt sniffed the bathtub, the towel that he had just used, and the toilet seat. And he lightly ran his finger across the recently wet edge of the bathtub, and then he licked his index finger and his thumb, and ran his tongue over his fangs and interesting. Eleanor whispered to Amy, "What is he doing?" "He's analyzing his living condition, and Kurt specializes in the development of dragons, and as such he came here to personally inspect his process," answered Amy. "Oh, well, I keep forgetting that he's a dragon," said Eleanor, "and I've never seen his dragon form, and I did hear a colorful story about it, but that's about it." Kurt then turned to where he was sitting, and he lifted him by the hair and paddled by the hair, and he giggled as Kurt sat here on top of the bed. Eleanor was taken aback by this, and she said, "Is he allowed to do that?" He'll be fine, and sneered Amy. Kurt then got a comb from his pouch, and he combed out the top of his head, and he narrowed his eyes slightly. Otherwise, he sat cross-legged on the bed, resting his face on his hand. Neither Amy nor Eleanor seemed inclined to comment on anything in particular. Kurt then reached into his bag, he got a knife, and he cut off one of his scroll, and then he smelled the hair and ate it, and then he took a deep breath, and a slight burst of flames came out. Eleanor jumped back from her seat, and Amy snapped, pointing to the roof. "Be careful, most of these houses made of wood." And then Kurt just simply growled in response, and finally Kurt opened his mouth wide, and then held at his face with both his hands, and then he said, "Ah." And he, in imitation, also opened his mouth wide and said, "Ah." Kurt placed his index finger inside of his mouth, and he inspected the tongue and the walls of the mouth and the sharp fangs, and Amy commented, "Oh, how primitive." Kurt then took out a knife, and he smelled it, and he started biting down on it, and when he devoured it, handled it up, Amy nodded and then commented, "I see." Kurt then kneeled down to be at eye level with her, and then he took out a deep breath and inhaled smoke into his nostrils. He imitated Kurt in response, and Kurt inhaled his fume, which made him cough. He frowned and said to one of the maids, "He is a bit low on salt. Either take him to the beach or put salt in his swimming hole." "Yes, doctor," said the maid, saluting him. Kurt got out from his pouch a jagged piece of navy blue chal Titanless, and he started munching on it. Following, he looked deep into his eyes, and they was bright and clear, and for the final test, Kurt got a little porcelain piano figurine, and he took the porcelain figure out of his head, and the porcelain smashed against his face, and Kurt shook his head slightly, and then asked, what was he expecting? Was that supposed to happen? And Kurt picked up the shattered remains of the porcelain piano, and his forehead was slightly red, and it was dripping a bit of blood from the cut, and Kurt silenced him. His eyes had done almost none of a system menace response, and his eye droplet should fix the problem. And Kurt reached into his sleeve, and he brought out a honey-colored crystal eye droplet, and the top handle was black. And Kurt opened it, and he filled the droplets with 6 drops, and he poured 3 drops into each of the eyes. And his pupils changed from being round to being slit-like, and then round again. And Kurt then reached for something to throw at it, and his eyes became slit-like. So, his response to danger is very slow, because he doesn't perceive people as danger, but then, so an eye droplet cure that condition. Following Kurt examined his hands, neck, and shoulder, and he slightly pinched his arm and leg muscle, and he also had his flex and extend his joints individually. Kurt then opened the top of his kimono, and he rested his head against his back, and he closed his eyes to hear his breathing. And then he felt the belly, the ribcage, the spinal cord, and he shook his head with disapproval, and then he said, he needs more gold. Someone needs to make certain he sleeps with his belly against the gold, and he should not be sleeping on his back anymore. And Camden flexed his muscle, and he took a deep sigh before saying, now for the hard part. He was quite pensive for a while. As he tried to examine all of the information that he has gathered in order to come out with a more concise dietitian plan. But eventually, once he was done with his analysis, he gave it to the maid before the party. After Kurt left, he went to take his afternoon nap, and the maid had placed a rich golden blanket over him, and Amy and Eleanor had taken the conversation elsewhere in order not to interrupt his nap. And his mind showed more activity while asleep, and he worked overtime to make sense of the events that had transpired, and the scenes we saw racing through his mind were muddled and lacked any time sequence. And his nap usually lasted between 2 or 3 hours, and they usually were rather dull to watch, except when he was sleepwalking. And like sleepwalker, it was hard to tell when he was doing it. And he did show traits of being surprisingly intelligent, somewhat aggressive during his sleeping cycles, and it was even worse when he had night terrors. Our ramblings were interrupted when he rose languidly from his bed, and his eyes had a glassy look to them, and he narrowed them, and he started to laughing hysterically. And Tadeusz conveniently entered the room and said to her, he said, you are horrible observers. And we said nothing to Tadeusz in remark, and it would be unprofessional to intervene in the storyline. Still, this got us thinking that maybe they had not figured out how he functioned. After all, most of the stress of battle would have been relegated to his rider, and perhaps most of his erratic behaviors were an outward projection of his twin brother's mental state. After Monkey King was a weak twin, and remember how Monkey King used to cower behind his big brother. And thanks to our ramblings, we missed the part when he left the room. Thankfully, somebody was paying attention, and when he got out of bed, he was in all fours like a cat, and he languidly stretched his limb, and then he stood up, and he yawned a bit, and he scratched his hair, and he was in the habit of eating dinner around sunset. Still, he had an hour of loafing around, and we tailed after him, and he took another return, and then we lost him from track. And as he urged, Wikisoko was the one to catch Shadow, and she had observed his disappearance as enough to predict where he would turn up again. And she had yet to decipher where he was going and what he was going. We argued on how to remedy this problem. And perhaps we should just put a tracker on him like they do with a common fish. Are we even allowed to put a tracker under his skin? Inquired Mallory. Well, the real question is, can we even get close enough to do it? And then it'd be like, any volunteers? And they'd be like, nope. And he eventually returned. He eventually teleported in a place where we could actually see him, and then we just continued trailing after him. And he went upstairs to the TV, and he took his sketchbook from the shelf, and a 5B sketching pencil was inside of it. And he took his notebook with him as he went outside his home, and he sat down in one of the stair steps that led up the mountain. And the sun was starting to set lower over the horizon. And he could see a few of the great men flying about to get a better look at the sunset, and the clouds were just turning to acquire a faint rosy hue. And the sun was in sunset to practically last longer, and this aberration was in part one of the reasons why Saturnastra had 30 hours instead of the recommended 28. After gazing at the sunset, he scanned the fields before him, and he noticed that Eleanor and Amy were dressed like medieval farmers. And since he was in a higher ground, he was able to see the depths of the hole that the pair were digging up. And the hole was about 6 inches deep and 3 meters wide, and the dig cell was cemented with strings tied on tree branches, and the string formed a circle with a 5 acute triangle and those shorter stars. But visually speaking, if from far away, it resembled a pentagram. And he then started sketching, and he would look up and then start to draw. And a seemingly empty landscape with 2 figures on the foreground became alive with creatures that only he could perceive. Well, we could perceive it too, but there were not, but alas, our electrical equipment could not. As a whole, most advanced civilization of intelligent beings have underdeveloped eyes, and in this respect, our evolutionary path was drawing ever closer to those of the gray, more the pity since they are rather skinny fellows. Alright, so then that's the end of that chapter.